Warmest greetings to one and all in the blessed name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Now we thank God for confirming our seating capacity such that we are all able to worship just like in pre-COVID days, together in the worship hall, no longer spread out all over the place. It is indeed God's goodness and mercy that we are able to gather in this way. Now let us turn our Bibles to Joshua chapter 24. Joshua chapter 24. Last week we saw that this passage is clearly about the covenant renewal with God. God officially gathered them and spoke of what He has done, His part in His covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and now with this people. So this covenant with these people now is to remind them that they are in it. He has done His part, and now you must do your part. That is why, look at verse 14. Now therefore, having seen verse 1 to 13, and we'll see some of them more today. Now, if you have seen all the things that God has done in keeping covenant with you, now therefore you fear the Lord and serve Him and put away the other gods. You do your part. So these 2 weeks is really to ask ourselves, am I living in covenant with God? Why does God do anything for us? Last week we see, why does God lead you to Perth? Why does God lead you to this current state of life? It's Him fulfilling His covenant with you, bringing you to a place where you can fulfill your part. Now today we are going to ask ourselves the question, why does God help you? Why does God aid you at all in your life? Why? Again, verse 14 tells us, whether young or old, whether male or female, whether married or single, whether child or childless, whether healthy or not healthy. It's a simple thing. God helped you in anything for the purpose of you fulfilling verse 14. Now, therefore. In other words, the answer to last week and this week's question is simply this. Why does God do all this? Lead you, help you? It is that you will then live in covenant with God. This is about you living in covenant with God. As long as you are a believer, you are in the covenant of grace. You are already in covenant with God. It is whether you live it out or not. And you have to. It's like two persons who are married. Whether you think you are married, whether you think you're husband and wife, it doesn't matter. You are in covenant. You must live out your covenantal purpose. You live in covenant with each other. So we are in covenant with God by virtue of our salvation. Now we will see this week how God wants to emphasize to them, I have helped you in so many ways. How? Let us just look. How? Now look at verse 5. He traces it all the way back to Egypt, right? At this point of time. Now I plagued Egypt, and afterward I brought you out. There is no way you could have left Egypt. Pharaoh did all he could to keep you. On your own, you could not have left. It took 10 miracles to cause Pharaoh to finally say, I relent. Without that, they would not have been able to escape the grip of Pharaoh. Why did he help you when you and I go through severe difficulties in life? Now, was it just so that they can be relieved of slavery? No, it was to come out and form a nation to fulfill their covenantal purpose with God. That was the reason. Whenever God helps you and I through difficulties, like you look at verse 6. You came out of Egypt, and you came unto the sea, and the Egyptians pursued your fathers and chariots and with horsemen and chariots unto the Red Sea. We studied that. You could not have escaped. These are the most advanced military equipment at that time, used by the most advanced soldiers. You could not have survived But yet God says, you survived. When, in verse 7, when you cried unto the Lord, when you cried to me, remember, when you were in Egypt, I put darkness between you and the Egyptians. Think of that. Just like, it's darkness in my neighbor's house, and it's not darkness here. How do you have a wall of light? It's a miracle. God says, I did that for you. Now, they groped around, they could not see. They had plagues which plagued their animals, but did not touch a single of your animal. God can direct plagues in COVID-19 perfectly. It can infect someone, but if God does not intend for it to infect you, God can direct the diseases. Just like we saw in those days. There is no way you and I can escape anything. So do not think that you and I, we escaped thus far. But it is COVID-19 infection is by the mercy and the help of God. We pray to Him. And He chose that, yes, according to my will, I intend that you do not get it. Then we are protected. So whichever way, we must know, we cry to God. Now, have you cried to God for many things, right? Sometimes your children, they are ill, or you're about to give birth, and then you're worried. Or your job is at stake, or your health, the doctor gives you some news, and then you worry. Or financial challenges, the outlook ahead. Then you cry to God, God, please help, please help. And God says, I heard you. Now, like I pray in the pastoral prayers, those of you who do not come for prayer meetings, you do not know. You miss out these lessons of faith and this joy of seeing God answering prayers. Amazingly, month after month after month, when His children cry to Him. But the question is this, why do we cry to God? Why does God help us? Answering this morning's title, it is always so that you would live in covenant with Him. It is not for your own pleasure. The things that whenever we do it for God, He answers according to His timing and His will, amazingly. Now then, we see further. So He helped when we cry. For what? To live in covenant with Him. Now, I know what you're thinking, all right? We'll come to that. What does it mean to live in covenant with God? So to live in covenant. Yeah, God does this to live in covenant so that I will live in covenant with Him. What does it mean? We will study that in verse 14. All right, so be patient. But the point now is God says, God wants to emphasize, I've been helping you. I've been answering your prayers when you're in trouble. Then what else? Now look at verse 8. In verse 7. Now and brought sea upon them and covered them, and your eyes have seen what I've done in Egypt. Now many of this, I did some calculation. Many of these people would have seen. They would have been quite young. And they would have been going through this with their parents. All right? So some of you very young ones around us, if you were there, you would see the miracles of God and being held in the parents' hand and walking. They witnessed some of this. Then they went through the wilderness with them. But the parents, they were not allowed to cross over. They died in the wilderness. But these children, they went across. And they went through the battles with Joshua. And now God says, now you are the ones you witness. Now many of us are witnesses to God's goodness in our own lives. Isn't it true? In other people's life as well. In our times. We witness those things. Why does God want you to witness? Why does God want you to know? So that you will live in covenant with God. Now next one, look at that. Verse 8. Then He says, I brought you over to the land of the Amorites and across Jordan, and then they fought with you, and I destroyed them. God not only hear your cries, now God removed difficulties. Removed, destroyed. It became no longer an issue. Have you experienced those things in your lives? I've experienced many of that. I thought this is going to cause everything to go wrong, and then God completely removes it. Could be people, could be situations, could be certain circumstances. God completely removes it. Why does God do that? Because He wants you to live in covenant with Him. Then next, So you see, he keep talking about that, and then you think about your own life. Now next, verse 9, and Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab, arose and warred against Israel, and sent and called Balaam to the son of Beor to curse you. Verse 10, but I would not hearken unto Balaam, therefore he blessed you still. So I delivered you out of his hand. What was this circumstance about? Why did God want them to know about this? What was the help? Now, if you knew this story, the children of Israel were just going along their way up in the mountains. Balaam and Balak, they were thinking of how to attack these people. They wanted to wipe out the children of Jehovah. They wanted these people to be cursed. So the king asked Balaam, the unbelieving prophet, unbelieving seer, to exercise some witchcraft on them. Right? Go and curse them. Like today, there are people who do that. They go to certain countries and they hate certain people. They go to these countries. They go to witchcraft people and say, I want you to make this little thing and then poke needles in it and curse this person that I don't like at work, or my relative that I don't like. So this is what they were doing, trying to curse. But the point is this: all the while when they were marching, they did not know this was happening. When you know the story, the children of Israel was ignorant that this was happening behind their backs. And God is saying, you didn't even know I was protecting you. You didn't even know your colleagues was plotting against you. We might have been delivered by many things, from many things by God, and we don't even know. You could have caught COVID-19 when you were at that place. You didn't even know. God sent His hand to just wave it away. You don't even know. So God is saying, you don't even know the things that I've done to protect you. You cry, I protect you. You cry, I protect you. You didn't cry, you didn't even know, and I continue to protect you. For what? So that you will fulfill your covenantal purpose, your covenantal living with me. God does not protect us for no reason. Now this must not just assure the believer. This must remind us the fact that I have life, I have breath, I have health, whether young or old, I have abilities. And God has been doing this, providing, God has been protecting in the foreground, in the background, is so that I will live my covenantal purposes with Him. Remember that. Now, next one. Well, you're elderly, right? You're elderly. You may not have known when you were lying on the operating table, when you had a certain illness, you are passed out, even young people. You're unconscious under GA. You don't even know how God will intervene, guide the doctor's hand to not make that mistake. God does all this, and then you get up from the operating table and then you recover, and then you don't think about this. We must think. We must think. When you drive, very often we hear many of the testimonies, you're driving and then how God protected you from a disaster. Caused you to notice, right? When someone was driving, and then this one of our worshippers sitting on the other side, and then he say the driver did not notice some accident about to happen, and he noticed, right? God will cause you to notice and say, hey, then the person swerved and the accident was avoided. Now all these things, when it's over, what do you think? Phew, lucky. We say lucky. There's no luck. It's God protecting. Then after that, say, wow, lucky. Let's go for a good meal. Right? No, it's to say, God, you spared my life. For what? To live out my covenantal purpose. I've shared with you before. I went through an accident when I was in the United States on a business trip. No one could have survived that accident. When the police came, they looked at it and said, how could you survive without a scratch? It's impossible. God's protection. And after that, I have to ask myself, God, why did you spare me? And when God called me to the ministry, that was the first thing I remembered, spared for a reason. Saved for a specific purpose. Now remember these words, for specific purpose. And when the time comes, and God says, this is my covenantal purpose with you, you fulfill it. Now furthermore, let's look further down. Well, by the way, for your children as well, you cry to God and God deliver, do not forget that. But we see more after, God willing. Now look further down. And then verse 11, and then he named a whole long list of people. Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Hivites, Jebusites, and I delivered them into thine hand. What is this about? Now, not only God protected you, and delivered you from circumstances that you didn't know about, God highlighted the many names of very vicious people, very experienced soldiers, people that were entrenched in the land. You can't kick them out. But God said, I delivered them to you. Have you gone through life situation where you say, this is not possible. I can't get out of this situation. It's too oppressive. It's too overwhelming. But God says, I delivered them into your hand. For what? So that you can live out your covenantal purpose. Now, next one, verse 12. As an hornet, and drave them out from before you, even the 2 kings of the Amorites, but not with thy sword, nor with thy bow. Now what is God saying? Every protection. Well, there was some of them. You went to fight with the Gershites and the Hittites and the Perizzites. You fought. But I also want you to remember, I would send my creation. I can change the situation in creation to bring victory to you without you needing to lift a single hand to do anything. Why does God want to say that? To help you to know, you live out your covenantal purpose. I will protect you. I will help you even in the background. You live out your covenantal purpose. No matter how difficult, I will help you. You do that, and when you think that you can't do anything, you don't even need to. There are times where I will just work, and you just sit back and watch how I will take care of the situation as you live out your covenantal purpose. It's to encourage them. God keeps saying all these things to say, look, you can trust me. Live out your covenantal purpose. You can trust me to protect you, to help you. But not only that, not only protect. Now he wants to say, verse 13, I've given you a land for which you did not labor, and cities which you did not build. I built not, and ye dwelt in them. For the vineyards and the olive yards which you planted not, do ye eat. Not only protection, I provided. When we live out God's covenantal purpose, the protection will be there. The provision will also be there. Because sometimes we feel, well, how am I going to go through all this? See, do you realize these things you did not even lift a finger for? I got someone else to plant, to build, and you just walk in and you take over. They literally walked into the land and took over their houses, took over their vineyards, took over their farm, took over their animals. And they start living. God is saying, I will always provide for whatever that is needed for you to live out your covenantal purpose, even to this extent if that is what is needed. Now, do you realize that many of us, we have many things that actually we did not work for. We did not even build up. Well, I think this church is one example. We are worshiping here. And we have facilities for our children to attend Sunday school. We are able to worship in this way. You were not part of those that gave to build the church. You were not even part of it. But God says, you see, I provide this for you. You just come, you sit, and you start to be able to fulfill your covenantal purpose in this church. You should not say, oh, I'm just here to enjoy this for myself. I'm not interested in serving. I'm not interested in contributing. I'm not interested in being part of the church. That was what happened to them. After some time, they look, wow, these are very nice. And they just use it for themselves, not for the covenantal purpose. So God says, now, many things, I just drop it on your lap. It's to fulfill covenantal purpose. So you cannot just not be part of church. Now, other things. I notice some of you have certain talents, certain skills that is just innate in you. Some have good discernment, good at looking at situation and making sound, wise choices. Right? And I feel that I can trust many things to you. Some of you have gifts, technical gifts. Yeah, you went through the same training, but somehow you are very good at designing some things for God's use. Just given that. Many of you are given certain skills that God just gave it to you. Didn't give it to someone else. It just dropped in your lap. And you have that ability. We have many things that God gives. For what? To fulfill your covenantal purpose. Have you gone through a situation where you say, whoa, how to solve this? And somehow God gave you the ability, the wisdom. God just dropped it in your lap and you managed to do it or overcome something. So God says, now all this, why did He spend this time talking about this? Last week, why did I lead you through your whole life to where you are, to what you are? Because of living in covenant with me. To this week, why did I protect you? Why did I provide for you? Again, verse 14, to live in covenantal living with me. So now the question is this. We keep saying, fulfill your covenantal purpose. Live out your covenantal purpose. Live in covenant living with God. What does it mean? Now at this covenant renewal, we will find that answer in verse 14. Now, therefore. Since God has done all these things in covenant with you, now you renew the covenant by doing these things. So every time you think, what is covenantal living? I'm saved for a specific purpose. God provide for me for a specific purpose. God protect me for a specific purpose. Remember, FSP, for a specific purpose. Right? For covenantal purpose. And you find the answer in verse 14. Number 1, F, fear the Lord. What is covenantal living? Begins with fear the Lord. I want to live in covenant with God. Then fear the Lord. We'll see what it is. Then next one, S, serve Him. Serve Him. I want to live in covenantal living with God. I want to fulfill my covenantal purpose. What do? Serve Him. And then the third, for what specific purpose? In covenantal living, put away, the P, put away the gods of your fathers. Put away gods, put away idols. So what is living in covenant with God every day in my life? You think about it, this is what it is. Fear Him, serve Him, put away the other gods. Now therefore, in covenant renewal, now therefore, you live that life. So we have no excuse now. We can't say, always talking about covenantal living. What is it about? Here is the answer, directly from God Himself at the covenant renewal. Now, what is fear God? Now, of course, we can preach a whole year just on the fear of God. But I just want to highlight some things that I think are especially important. All right? Especially important in this context of living in covenant with God and how God has mentioned things. Now, number 1 is to have a reverential fear of disappointing God. Living in covenantal living with God is fearing to disappoint Him. Why did God want to say all these things to them? It's to stir them, to remind them, and to make them know, no, after all the meticulous planning to bring you to birth, to bring you to this state of life, after all that meticulous planning, you mean you are just going to chart your own life and live for yourself and do what your own aims and careers are? How can I, Lord? You see, in this context, when God brought all these details to them, is to say, how can you now go your own way? How can you say, Lord, I just want to live for my own career, for my own family, for my own pleasure, for my own life? You cannot. You say, God, I cannot disappoint you. Like I shared before, the students from certain countries, I'll just say it, from China, all right, they come, and many of them, when I speak to them, they say, I'm going back this year. and I'm studying very hard. No, I want to get this result. I want to get that result. I say, why? Why is that so important to you? Because I do not want to disappoint my parents. They went through a lot to try and get me to Perth. They spent a lot of money to help me get here. And they continue to work very hard so that I can finish my studies and pay my fees here. They went through a lot in planning and protecting and helping and providing. I cannot disappoint them at all. You see, they have that fear. I'm so afraid that I shame their name by going back with less than the very best results. Now, this is what covenantal living is about. After all that I've done for you, God, I am so fearful of grieving you by disappointing you, by doing things that are for myself and achieve my own things, but not yours. And your purpose left lying there in church, in my life, in my family, it is not taken care of. But my things, very successful. So, number one is that not by going your own way, not by using all the things that He has provided you for your own pursuits. You think of your talents, you think of your children, you think of your time, you think of all these things. God, how can I use it like that for myself anymore? If you have been, then say, Lord, I'm so ashamed. I want to live in covenant with you. It's like husband and wife, right? Living in covenant as husband and wife. After everything you have gone through, and later age, I want to divorce you. Why? You're old already. I want to marry a younger girl. Or can be the other way around nowadays. You're the old man now, right? This young man is interested in me. How can you? How can you? How can you? Well, we say that. But that's exactly how we are with our covenant with God. Now, next one. This fear. Lord, I fear to disappoint you. Now, fear of abusing what God has given us. I've just mentioned that. Fear of abusing. Fear of abusing my place in Perth for my own pleasure, own relaxation, and not serve, not care about the work of God, not be part of the church. Fear of abusing. Now, next one is fear of being set aside. Fear of being set aside. God said, I provided all this for you. You want to disappoint me? I've done all this for you. You want to abuse it? I've done all this for you, and you mean you don't want to fulfill my covenantal purpose? You don't want? So in the context, I want to bring up these things. It's like a parent who put you through school. I worked so hard. I did so many things to get you into this school. And you are there. And I provide you with all the fees, all the pocket money. I did everything. Even things that you don't even know about while you're sleeping. I'm working very hard to make sure that you can continue studying. Then you don't want to study? You wake up in the morning and say, I don't go to school. I'm not interested in school. I don't want to study. So after all this I've done for you, and you don't want to fulfill the purpose for which I've done all these things for you? Fear that you will be set aside. Okay, what will Father say? All right then, stop going to school. I'll call your school. No need to go to school anymore. All right? Stay at home. Do whatever you want to do. Grow up and have nothing in your life, and you won't be able to make a living, and you will suffer. Fine, no problem. There will come a time where God keep pleading, live in covenant living with me. I provide all this for you to fulfill my purpose. If you do not want, all right, then I will set you aside. I believe there are many Christians who are living such a life because they do have no fear of that. They fear losing their job. They fear losing their position at work. They fear losing their health. They fear many things, but they do not fear being useless to God. I only fear being useless at work. I only fear being not the top student or good student in school. I only fear that I don't have health. And I'll do everything for those things. But serve God. Be useful to Him on earth before I die. What for? They have no fear of that. Do you have a fear that you keep going on and abusing God, what God gave to you and your family? You cried to Him, Lord, please help us. Lord, I've got no job. Please, my children need to. You cried, and then God gave you a job. And then after that, you abuse everything for yourself now. You don't even care about serving. You use everything. Church has needs. Give to church. Oh no, I'm going to buy my own things first. Go for my own holidays. You remember all the time that you cried to Him? Now don't be surprised that God will do to you what He did to Israel. Israel was set apart. Israel was, set aside. Israel is a living reminder for every believer. They abused after crying to God, after God helping them, protecting them, providing for them. They just abused what God gave them that was meant for His covenantal purpose, and God took it all away. You cry, God, please heal me of this. Please heal me of this. Please heal me. God, please help me pass my exam. Please help. One time, Lord. And then after that, when God help you, go back to my sin. Go back to living for self. Don't care about what God wants you to do, what God commands you to do. Don't be surprised, God will take everything away. You say, God, this child is for you, to be brought up for your kingdom. And then God help you, God provided. And then as the child grows, you say, no, I want the child to be this and that for me. God will say, I will stop providing for you. I will stop answering you. I will take away eventually what I've given you. God's, as I said in the previous week, God's patience. Don't mistake God's patience. Don't mistake God's long-suffering with Him condoning. It's His mercy. Come back, child. Come back. Stop. Live in covenant with me. I am still providing for you. I'm still helping you, helping your child, helping your health. But I'm waiting for you to live in covenant with me. God waited for hundreds of years patiently for Israel to wake up, to live in covenant with Him. They would not. And then finally, the axe finally fell. Yours, maybe in your own lifetime, maybe in your child's lifetime. So do you have that healthy fear? Lord, I don't want to disappoint you. Do you also have that healthy fear of, Lord, I am afraid that when I keep going on like that, you will stop using me and you will take away everything that I have today. Because like a parent, why do you want to keep giving your child money? I give you money to go to school, to eat proper food, to pay your school fees. And then what you do with the money? You keep using to buy computer games, buy chocolates, buy toys, buy whatever, and don't use it for what your parents give it to you. You think your parents will keep giving it to you? One day say, all right, I've been very tolerant with you for many years. This will stop now. Do you have that realization? So God says, after all I've done for you, now live in this fear towards me. Now what else? Then F. So you say, when every time, living covenant with God, FSP. He saved me for specific purpose. Fear, serve, and put away idols. So what is serve? What is serve? Now, serve is in the first place, like a servant. To say that I want to serve God, or I serve God. I put it this way. To serve is a life of being a servant, right? You say, straightforward. To serve is being a life of a servant. Are you a servant to God, or you want to be the master with God? God, I cry to you, help me, right? God, you provide it. You give me all these things, right? Because God, you owe it to me. I want it for my own life. Or are you a servant? A servant is subject to a master. When God says live in covenant living is, you have to acknowledge in a covenant there are parties. And this is a suzerainty covenant. I am the master, not you. Subject to a master, having benefits from and existing to do only what the master's desire. I say again, to serve is a life of being a servant, subject to a master, having benefits from, and existing to do only what the master desires. This is exactly what serve means. When you have a servant, when you hire a servant, what is it? I will provide for you. You can live in my house. I will include food for you. I will give you a salary. When you're sick, I will make sure that you get access to a doctor. When we have COVID-19 jabs, I make sure that you are also registered. You care. There are benefits. But all those benefits is so that this servant will do your will. Correct? Will serve you while you care for it. Care for him or her. So that is what it is. That is serve. Now, you say, I want to live in covenantal living. You must humble yourself and say, God, I am your servant. All these benefits are my privileges that you give me, not my... you don't owe it to me. And whatever I have is so that I can serve you. It's not so that I can go my own way in Perth. Now it's very sad when God bring you all the way here, plan everything, and then you choose to do your own things. And then God give you all the things, and you choose to do your own, use them for yourself. No master will tolerate that for very long. Now, but another thing about this serve, when we say I live in covenantal living, in this serving God. Now, what are you thinking when you hear the word serve? Many of us simply think, serve. Serve means do things in church. Good. It does include that. But you must realize, serve is not only in church. You can say, if I have nothing to do in church, then I have no service. I'm not part of serving God. Then you misunderstand. It's also in your personal life. When you say, I serve God, if I have nothing to do in church, then I have nothing to serve. No, your personal walk. God provided you everything for using for church, as well as in your personal life to use it, to evangelize, to outreach. Why did God give you all the talents to work, give you the education? So that when you are at your workplace, when you are in your school, in your personal life, you are a testimony for God. I serve God by being a testimony for Him. You must not fall into the mistake of thinking, if I have nothing to do in church, then I have no service. What happened to the rest of your 6 days of your life? You mean your life is only a few days of service? 7 days. Of course, on the 7th day, many services. On the weekdays, also many services. But majority of your time is spent at work, in school, at home. That is covenantal living as well. I serve God by being the best Christian worker. I'm not here to make money for myself. I'm not here to seek promotion. I'm simply here to serve God. Serve God means what? Not with eye service. Whatever my master says, I do it to the best as a Christian. That is why you work. Your work is a service. I go to school. I be a good student. I be an obedient student, pupil in school. I'm different from others. Not because I want to be teacher's pet. Not because I want to do well so that people praise me. It's all just about service to God, to be the very best. My talents you give to me, Lord, I want to be proud of it. I use it for you in school, at work, to bring up my child. Everything is service. All right, so I want you to understand that. So service is in church, service is at work, service is in school, service is in your personal walk, service is in your family, service is in your home. It's all part of covenantal living. Now, why is it important to understand this? Because you cannot say that, well, you cannot also say, Lord, I live in covenant living with you, right? So I just serve my family. I just be a very good person at work. I be a very good Christian at work, but church, not interested. You cannot say that as well. Lord, I'm very good with bringing up my child at home. They're bringing them up in your ways, but I'm not interested in them being part of church. Living in covenant with God is a cross. Doesn't mean that you are being a good Christian at work, being a good Christian family, then church is not important. It's all part of it. Neither can you say only in church, then at work, I live like the world. Living in covenant with God is every aspect of your life, 24/7 a day. That is what it is. Now, why do I want to say this? Because you cannot think, I live in covenant with God only in certain aspect of my life. And if that aspect is good enough, I am living in covenant with God. No, you cannot. As long as God has given you those abilities, and the moment church asks you, you should realize the time has come to use those abilities. It's time to use it. You cannot say, no, I'm already very busy at work, My work is very tough, It's not like other people in church. Their life is different from mine. They say, no, I'm not going to serve. You cannot say that. God says, I will help you. I will enable you. I will provide for you. If your approach, prayerfully consider, unless there's a very genuine reason. Now, next one. What else about this service? Now, then it comes to this part. God did not simply say serve. Living in covenantal living is serve Him in sincerity and truth. What is this about in covenantal living? Sincerity. Now, sincerity is honest, genuine, full and wholehearted commitment to serve Him. Honest, genuine, full-hearted commitment to live in covenant with God. God included that to be very sure that we are clear about covenantal living. This is about like husband and wives if they're married. Can you imagine husband and wife fulfilling covenant without sincerity, hypocritically, grudgingly, unhappily, and both live together like strangers? There's no love, there's no honesty, there's no genuine concern for each other. It's a very sad covenant living in a marriage, isn't it? That is what God is saying. Your life with me is like that. You live in covenantal living. It does not mean this. But I'm going to church, what? But I'm attending Bible studies, what? But I'm taking FEBC course, what? All the whats. Isn't it true? I mean, do all these things. What else do you expect from me? That is the attitude. That is wrong. Some are like that. You do all that because if you don't, well, people will comment about me that I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not coming to church. I bring my family because I don't want other people to say bad things about me. I do this. God is saying covenantal living is not like that. It's a very sincere, genuineness. Lord, I want to serve you, no matter how difficult. Oh, I don't care. I want to serve you. Genuine. Now, can you imagine someone who give you a birthday present? I give you this because I have to, because I must, because you expect. I do it. Okay, no. That is how we should not live with God. So don't live outwardly. That's what it's called. Just outwardly, pretending to go through a covenantal life with God. But in your heart, the moment you can complain, you want to complain. The moment you can get out, you want to get out. The moment there's an excuse that you can get out of it, you want to use that excuse. How does a husband feel that way towards a wife, and wife towards? The moment, the slightest thing, you want to escape from showing love. All right, so understand this covenantal living aspect. So it's inward, not just outward acts. Now, many of you are very good, and I thank God for that. But sometimes I wonder, in your heart, are you doing it sincerely, with love, with desire? And nothing, no matter how difficult, you still want to do it because you really believe in what you're doing, in the way you live for God. That is what it is. Now, sincerity. Now, I hope that, then what about truth? What about truth? Now, we often relate truth to, well, all the biblical principles, the doctrinally correct. When we serve God, we must be doctrinally correct, and all that is correct. It is there. We have studied a lot of that. But in this context, there is a certain truth that is very important for us to live in covenantal living. What is that? Now, God is saying, I've done all that for you, all that, but I want you to know, everything is so that you can live out your covenantal purpose. Use everything for me. Use everything to fulfill this. It's like a master hire a servant. It's like your company hire you. Everything that they do for you, you think it's purely for your pleasure? Everything that they do for you is so that you can successfully fulfill what they hired you for and provided and trained you for. Understand that. That is an important truth in covenantal living. In other words, you and I must come to realize that God, why did you help me? Why did you remove this difficulty in my life, in my family? Why did you provide for me? Why do you give me abilities that I didn't even, have to work very hard for? Why, God? God removed all these things so that you have the freedom to serve Him without hindrance. Use that freedom. When you cry to God and He answered to you. Let me ask you, parents, you cry to God for many things in your family. My child, God, please, please, please. Then when God answers, where are you now? Where are you now? You cry to God for jobs. You cry to God for help in schoolwork, in your project. You cry. Then after that, where are you? Because you have lost this truth. This truth is not strong in you and I. Now, truth in God's word can mean the body of truth. It also includes the instructions of God, the precepts of God. That is truth. The precept of God in covenant is this. Everything that I've given you, when I remove problem, is so that you can serve me better. The reason why I give you a job, so that you don't have to keep worrying. I have no food on the table tomorrow. I still have to worry about paying my rent tonight. Many of us don't have to worry about that. Why do you think God provided for you for those things? Why? Why do you think God removed problems in your family, in your workplace, in your child? Why? So that now you have no hindrance to serve Him freely, give freely. This truth is very important in covenantal living. Until you and I see that everything, now we always pray, God, everything is from you, everything is for you, but is it really true into your life? Now seniors, we experience this free church. Maybe someone say, no, I did give, right? But this free church. Now one of the things that God gives you, and maybe some others, some of us, God gives us more than others. And some of us, we are at a stage of life where we can give more than others. Giving is serving. Please know that. If you say, well, I'm old already, I cannot serve. Giving financially is part of serving. Because God has given everything to you. Well, actually, I want to look at this in it. How do you feel? Give my money, my heart and money, all my life that I worked so hard until I'm so old. Give? Why? Why do we feel like that? We should have no qualms, God, in everything that I have in my will, I happily give it to your work, your mission, your work. Because we have lost the covenantal truth that from the day God gives you $1 to the day you have collected whatever that dollar is, $1 million, $100,000, is for His covenantal purpose. Many cannot accept that because they cannot serve in truth. They cannot give in truth. This truth is not in many of us, whether you're young as well. God, I worked during my school holidays, God, this is my money. I wanted to buy my own things. You mean now there is a need? Give to your church. Lord, how hard I work. Now I'm so encouraged by some who, they work during school holidays because I cannot afford to go to the camp. They want to use it towards their covenantal purpose, to grow spiritually. They work so that they can go for camp. How do you view your possessions? It must be a truth that you and I come to a sincere reality. And I was very encouraged. I visited an elderly say, Pastor, when I die, this house is for God. They understand because in that there's no holding back. Because in their heart, this truth is real. It's real to them. It's a truth. But many of us say, this is my hard-earned money. That is one truth that I want us to remember. You will never serve God in sincerity if this truth is not in you. You serve grudgingly. You give grudgingly. Now the next one. This other truth that we must realize in covenantal living is this. Serving God is the reason for my living on earth. Look at verse 14. One of the things that God repeats is serve. Verse 14. And serve him in sincerity. Put away gods of your fathers. Then in the end, and serve ye the Lord. Serve. Service is your life purpose. Serving God. Not serving your company. Not serving your school. Not serving your family. Not serving... Now, all those are part of our Christian living on earth. You work in your company not to make money for your company. If you are a good Christian, you will make money for your company. But you don't exist to make company for them. You serve God. You are there to be the best Christian example and testimony to glorify God. That is your service. Now, many of us may think like that in covenantal living. You know why many people complain, God, Pastor, I'm doing so much. Why some more? Maybe in your heart. Why are we like that? You know, my money, it's my money, why give? Because now the world views work for church, like you all, doing things for church, as volunteer work, right? Volunteer work. So you say, volunteer work, huh? You know, church, please don't be so demanding, huh? I volunteer to help you, you know. You better be thankful. So because of the failure to understand the covenantal truth, everything that God gave to you, protection, provision, is for Him. For you to serve Him. You're freed up to serve Him. You're provided enough to serve Him. Because many think it's voluntarism. Instead of understanding, God says, you serve. Say it twice. Covenantal living is serving Him. Now we begin to say that church is too demanding. You know, I go to work, you know. I'm sure many of you may say this. You know, church don't understand. You know how difficult my work is? And after church, still ask me to do things. I'm already giving money some more. I'm a volunteer. Now service means at work, serving. The moment work is ended, at home, serving. Serving who? Serving God. At work, still serving God. Reach home, still serving God. Family worship. Bring up children for the Lord. Singles, when I reach home, still serving. Reach home, there are things that you need to do for church. So don't think that once work is over, why must I still do things? No, you just stepped into the next area of service to God. It's a next area of service. It is not, I only serve at work or only serve at home, and that's all. So once you understand this truth, it is very, very strong and encouraging. Because when you go home, now you may not know, many who serve, they are busy like you. They are doing projects for church. We don't have full-time workers. There's only so much I and the session can do. They take on. They take journeys to help. They do a lot of things. The only thing that will keep you serving and living out your covenantal purpose is this. I am saved to serve Him correctly and sincerely. Not any old how, huh? Correctly and sincerely. Then you will never say, I'm so tired. I think I do not want to do this anymore. Which father goes home? You know, work is very tough. When I reach home, still got to look after the child, still got to help in this. I'm a father. I think I don't want to be a father anymore. Can you say that? You just simply know. At the end of work day is father. At the end of fathering, tomorrow is work again. You do not complain. Now that is life with God. This is a crucial covenantal truth that you must know. If not, you will murmur, you will complain, and you will stop serving. And you will give up. You will not live long in your covenant with God. That is important. Now then, the last one very shortly, and then I close. What is your biggest barrier to covenantal living? Here, verse 14. And put away the gods of your fathers, and serve ye the Lord. Idols will be your biggest barrier to covenantal living. Idols. Because whatever God gives to you frees you up, and you have time, energy, resources, possessions. Because of idols, you will want to use those things for your idols. Do you understand? God gives you abilities, talents. Then you realize, if I study harder, God give me a brilliant mind. But I realize that if I study harder, I get better results. Or you are very capable at work. God gave you capabilities beyond your colleagues for you to be a good testimony. But instead you say, hey, actually I work harder. I stop attending church. I do more at work. I make more money. I get more praises. You begin to experience what God gives to you. You experience that when you use it, it feeds your idols. The idol of you, your child. At first you want to bring up for the Lord. Then after some time, my child is special, My child is smarter than other child. My child is more capable than other child. Then slowly that you will use your child to serve the idols, your idols, their idols. So idols will cause you to take whatever God has planned for you, have provided for you, have protected you from. You will use all those things to feed the idols. Unless you deal severely, whatever it is, you will not fulfill your covenantal purpose with God. FSP, that is what it means, to live in covenant with God. It takes you to surrender your all. Let us rise to sing the closing hymn. 420, 420, 420, 420. I surrender all.